Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Blue Jay Center podcast presented by the Sick Podcast Network. And the Jays have finally won a series against the Seattle Mariners. Stay tuned because we have a special one coming for you tonight.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to the Sick Podcast. Blue Jays Center.
Bautista drives it deep left field. Gone!
The sickest Toronto Blue Jays podcast. It's gonna be sick.
Cole Whiston, Rob Pentalemon, and James Price. And on today's show, after the Jays grabbed a series win over the Seattle Mariners, we are also bringing on the Seattle Mariners podcast guy from the Sick Podcast Network who does the Mariners Madness podcast. It's Rob as well.
Gentlemen,
Rob, how we doing, man? Welcome to the show.
I'm just happy the Mariners didn't get swept. That's how I'm doing.
That's awesome. Well, then, without further ado, let's get into it. So, I want to know what your thoughts were, heading into the series, because from us Jays fans, obviously we were pretty pessimistic with how the first 10 games went.
Yeah, I mean, look, I was right there with you. I think Mariners fans and Jays fans, in a lot of ways, are a handshake emoji this season.
Yeah.
Just with some of the dissatisfaction with some of the moves that weren't made over the offseason. But at least you thought Shohei Ohtani was coming. There was never a minute this offseason where I thought Ohtani was going to be in the Pacific Northwest. So I guess that's something. But no, I was pessimistic. And especially with the way the series went, just watching tonight's game, I mean, I was watching it. It got to the point where I'm just waiting for the bad thing to happen. Like, I don't even expect the good things anymore. And luckily tonight for the Mariners, a couple good things did happen.
Rob, you just mentioned you wait for the bad things to happen. Mm-hmm. And for any of the Jays fans listening, that is every game is the exact same mindset. How is this going to go sideways? And I've mentioned it so many times before, and it happened all last season. You get a leadoff double? That's cute. Let's see what happens after that.
Yeah.
Bases loaded, less than 2 out. Let's see how this goes wrong.
How can we screw this up?
Always. Yeah, it's always the mindset right now. So both teams were just, it was bad.
Where do you sit in the
pessimism ruined?
Exactly.
Oh, yeah. I was going to ask you a quick question there. So obviously the Mariners coming off last season, 88 wins, just one less than the Blue Jays, barely missing out on the playoffs. Jays getting in and not staying very long, getting swept early. That's caused a lot of pessimism around Jays Nation. I want to ask you, what's kind of the pulse of the Mariners fan base coming into this season? Are they hopeful about a playoff spot, or is it just like a lot of pessimism like on our side?
I would say the feeling of the Mariners fan base this off is, if we win, it'll be by accident, because ownership, like, this is the time for the Mariners where you have a starting rotation that on paper is the best in Major League Baseball. Forget the American League. Now, they haven't played like it so far this year. In fact, they've been hideously bad. But coming into this season, you were like, this is the best rotation ever. It's all homegrown guys for the most part, except for Luis Castillo. They're young. We've got a young core of Julio and Cal Raleigh, and we've got J.P. Crawford up the middle. Mitch Haniger's back. Everybody loves Mitch Haniger. He actually seems like the one guy on the face of the earth that wants to play for the Mariners. Yeah. Like, now is the time where you're supposed to go all in. And instead of going all in, the Mariners cut payroll. They traded Eugenio Suarez. They got rid of Jared Kelenic. They got rid of the other guy Teoscar Hernandez is the other guy. Yeah. They didn't, not only did they not try to get better, they actively got worse. They actively made the offense worse. So you're talking about pessimism galore. Now, they still have good players, so maybe they can compete for a playoff spot. And I think the Mariners and the Blue Jays will be scoreboard watching come September. But the pessimism reigns here in Seattle, and it is deserved.
You mentioned two names that are obviously going to be, make it or break it. It's the same with the Blue Jays, whether it's Vladimir Guerrero Jr. or Bo Bichette or Kevin Gausman. Luis Castillo and J-Rod, they have had, I think horrific is probably even nice to say, how their seasons have started. J-Rod in this series with the Blue Jays, boy, that was rough. Watching Mitch White, of all people, hang something in extra innings and have J-Rod get beat by Mitch White. That doesn't just even sound right. Now, J-Rod did something similar last season, the slower start, but then just really turned it on. But this right now is rough. And obviously we saw Luis Castillo in the opener, and he was not sharp. What have you seen so far to start the season that I don't know, can they turn this around?
Well, Julio, I'll say this. He has started March and April slow throughout his entire career. So, I mean, I'm nervous now. He's hitting under 200, which is, that's hideously bad. So, hopefully he can start to turn it around, but at least there's a track record here. But Luis Castillo, I've been saying it on my pod constantly. I don't think he's the ace of the Mariners at all. I think that last year he gave up at least 4 runs in 25% of his starts. That's not an ace to me. An ace is the guy like we saw Logan Gilbert tonight go out and pitch into the 7th, 8th inning and hold the other team to 1 run and be the stopper when you're on a 3-game losing streak like the Mariners were. That's an ace. Luis Castillo, he gives up these runs and he always seems to give them up right away. So you're always down 1-0, 2-0. Before the 4th inning, you're down. The Mariners have been outscored 40-14 in innings 1-5 this year. You're always in a hole. And it's not a way to live. And I think that's part of the reason why Julio's struggling, because guys are gripping the bat. They're trying to pull them out of this all the time. And I think it really has sort of affected the rest of the roster.
Okay, let's get into this specific series then. And it's crazy hearing you talking about the Mariners because a lot of the same sentiments ring true here in Toronto. Yeah. So I do want to get into
Spider-Man gift. The Spider-Man gift.
Exactly. Yeah. I do want to get into this series specifically. Coming into it, what was your mindset going up against the likes of Yusei Kikuchi and Chris Bassett and Jose Barrios?
Well, you know me. I mean, Yusei Kikuchi is no stranger to the Mariners. Right. So I came into the series thinking, all right, it hasn't gone great for Seattle so far this year, but I can't believe the pitching, especially the starting pitching. They have the worst ERA in the majors. It's over 6. So I was like, it can't continue to be this bad. Mm-hmm. And it has, except for Logan Gilbert today. But other than that, it has continued to be that bad. So I was sort of hopeful, like, hey, we can turn it around a little bit. I know the Blue Jays have a dangerous lineup, but good pitching is supposed to beat good hitting. And unfortunately, that good pitching has not shown up yet for the majority of this season. So I was hopeful at the beginning of the series and just deflated by the end of it.
Let me ask you something too as well. You just mentioned just now Blue Jays having a dangerous lineup. That's actually not at all the sentiment around here. We actually, as Blue Jays fans, what we're saying after the 4th hitter, lineup looks shockingly thin for a team that runs the kind of payroll the Blue Jays run. I want to ask you as an outsider, what is that? How you guys view the Blue Jays lineup as dangerous? Because us here in Toronto, it's not quite that. It doesn't resonate quite as much.
Well, I mean, Springer, Guerrero, Bichette, love them all. Justin Turner, okay, solid. I like Kirk. I think Kirk is a huge pain in the ass, and I say that as a compliment. Like, I feel like the guy's just a good hitter. He's certainly not an easy out. How many black holes do you think you have? Because that's what I've said on mine, where the Mariners have in the past have had just too many guys that are just a black hole where it's rallies go there to die. How many do you think you have in Toronto?
So we actually had a conversation in the chat today on how many guys in our lineup, but they got defense. You got to think of the defensive side of the ball. Those guys are IKF, everyday player so far through the first 13 games. Alejandro Kirk, Kevin Kiermaier, and Dalton Varsho, who hasn't shown any offense in the year and plus he's been with us now.
Well, at least you have good defense, because you saw the Mariners. Mariners defense it's a comedy of errors. I mean, Jorge Polanco, I will say, he made the catch in the bottom of the 9th that saved the game today.
Right.
But good, because he needed to make up for it, because his glove must have a hole in it the way the ball gets past him.
Okay, so
it makes it a little worse now that I hear you mentioned that.
Yeah,
a little worse about that.
We mentioned
RDRS is through the roof. All right.
Yeah, we mentioned your star player Julio Rodriguez. We've been pessimistic about our star player Vladimir Guerrero Jr. From your perspective as a Mariners fan, is Vladimir Guerrero Jr. still someone where he comes out to the plate you're scared?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
He's got that Guerrero blood where you don't have to make a bad pitch for him to smash it. That's the scariest part about Vlad to me, is he can crush even pitches like they're not even strikes, and he might crush it somewhere. And I know sometimes that could come back to bite you, but I still look at him as a dangerous hitter. I mean, you really you don't think he's a good player anymore?
It doesn't. Not that he's a good player. It just seems like the approach. You scratch your head at times as to what he's looking for and stuff like that. For example, today, had some good at bats. Obviously, the home run is a complete hanger from Gilbert. But you look in the 8th inning, right? 2 on, 2 out, big spot. They bring in Munoz to face him. He gets up 2-0 because he can't find the zone, and 2-0, he's chasing a slider outside the zone, and it just stuff like that has been making us scratch our heads really for the last couple of seasons. And he shows you a little bit of signs like he did through the first 3 ABs, and then he gives you that. And you're like, okay, not really sure what the plan was there. Or big spot, ground ball, double play, and he just kind of looks checked out at times. That from Jay's, again, could be the pessimism leaking in, but that's just kind of what it feels like in Jay's nation.
There's also like a holistic nature towards it because a couple of years ago, I'm sure you remember, the Blue Jays were like an offensive juggernaut. They were like a top 5 offense for multiple seasons, and in a sense, their team building strategy was to kind of scale back on the offense so they can have a top tier pitching rotation or pitching staff in general, like they were last season and hopefully this season. And that's kind of let Vladimir Guerrero Jr. kind of naked in the middle of the order. The hope was that he could carry the offense enough where it would be just enough to complement the good pitching staff. I think that's why that's had the expectations raised so much on him. In addition to obviously being a number 1 prospect and having all these ridiculous
I think
videos and numbers.
Right. The thing is that we've seen him be the MVP guy that he was touted to be coming into the league. We've seen it happen. And since that season, which obviously had its, outside circumstances even in it, he hasn't even been close. And it's been a fall off from 2021 to 2022 and then a fall off from 22 to 23. And, we're only obviously 13 games this season. He does have 3 bombs, which it took him until I think June to get his first home bomb last year. So we are off to a better start in terms of just raw power, but just the approach still looks like the same old Vladimir Guerrero Jr.
So let me ask you this: are you paying him next year?
We think that if we were going to pay him, it would have already happened.
I'm kind of in the camp that, and it's awful to even think this way. Again, it could just be my negative mindset right now, but with Bo and Vladdy both being up, and you look at the contract situation from the Blue Jays, there's not a lot of guys signed past that. Gosman's up after next season, Bassett's up after next season. You got Kikuchi's up after this season. You got all these players being gone after either this season or next with no contracts for your core players. And it's kind of worrisome, but you kind of smell the pivot. And
not to mention
dangerous place to be.
Yeah, not to mention the Jays franchise has never handed out the contract that those 2 guys are looking for.
No.
They've never done it. So it's
it would be like a franchise record. Yep.
And it's not like they've proved anything.
Well,
right?
Bo would be the only guy. And then
but they've gone to the playoffs and haven't won a game.
Exactly. And even with Bo Bichette, he kind of gives you the sentiment that Bo Bichette's the guy that's looking for free agency. He hasn't once. He almost gives you the idea that he never once thought about giving an extension to the Toronto Blue Jays. I'm going to free agency. I play a premier position. I'm a consistent guy every year of my career. There's no reason for me to take a team friendly deal to stay in Toronto when I can at least test the market and see who wants to offer me the bag. Whereas Vladdy, on the other hand, he's in a bit of a tougher spot. He claims he wants to be here. He continues to have down years. So it's yes, maybe the Jays can capitalize on that, but it's does Rogers still make an unprecedented, history-altering signing with a guy who has just been year after year after year disappointing from the one outlier year that you had?
Yep.
It's a tricky question because it's scary to be out there in the wilderness where you feel like you don't have that guy to build on. That's why Julio Rodriguez is beloved in Seattle because everybody's like, this is our guy. If nothing else, that's what the Mariners are really good at. They're really good at getting one guy. For a while, it was Ken Griffey Jr., then it was Alex Rodriguez, then it was Ichiro. Now it's Julio Rodriguez. They get one guy. The other 26 on the roster stink, but they got one guy that people will pay and go see.
Yeah, so getting back into the 3 games that happened, obviously, the Jays offense, turned it around the first 2 games, got on to Luis Castillo, got on to George Kirby. More so the bullpen in the second game than Kirby himself. But obviously our starters probably had their 2 best starts in those 2 games in Jose Barrios and Yusei Kikuchi. Going forward with this team, the Seattle Mariners team and the Jays team, who do you expect to be finishing the year above one another?
Oh, man. It's really close. I think they are pretty much in a lot of ways, they're a similar team. Yes. Your offense, like you talked about, is really dependent on a couple of guys that really have to carry the load. The pitching staff should be good. I think they're probably going to come down to facing each other. They'll be battling for a playoff spot in the American League. But the pessimist, the Mariners fan in me says, "Oh, don't worry, Mariners will find a way to screw it up." I mean, the Mariners lost the game to Milwaukee the other day, where Andres Munoz walked 4 straight guys, and that's how the game ended.
Yeah.
Like, so they can just implode. And so I'm being pessimistic, but I think they are 2 very, very similar teams. Let me ask you this with the pitching, because I'm terrified of the Mariners strikeouts. They've been striking out a ton to start the season. Only 2 teams, I think, have more strikeouts than Seattle has right now. Is the Blue Jays pitching really good, or are the Mariners hitters just that strikeout prone?
So the one thing that I think that the Jays front office has gotten right is the starting rotation. They've, just in terms of underlying numbers, have grabbed guys that actually show a lot of promise and have shown it in their careers. Yusei Kikuchi was the biggest flyer, and even then you could acknowledge as a Jays fan, despite the raw numbers, the underlying stuff was there, and you're like, I could see this guy if he figures it out and gets the confidence that he has something there. So from that perspective, I would say the Kevin Gausmans, the Berrios, the Yusei Kikuchis, and even the Chris Bassets of the world, those are actually legit pitchers. Chris Bassett, in fact, I don't know if you know, has never, if he's ever started more than 5 games in a season, his ERA has never went above 4, like in his entire career. And that is something that I think even us Jays fans were surprised by when we caught up with that stat the other day. So all of these guys are good in our opinion.
Yeah, the only gripe that I think Jays fans could have with the rotation is that, like Cole mentioned, they're all very legitimate. It's just that you mentioned the Mariners having so many homegrown guys. That's something that the Jays haven't been able to do. They've had to go out and trade, pay a premium to get a Jose Berrios, and they've had to pay Kevin Gausman, take a flyer on a Kikuchi, give Chris Bassett that contract. And right now, it didn't affect them last year, but their starting pitching depth is just really questionable after those 4 guys. So the hope all along is that in case injuries happen, that it'll leave them really, really shallow in terms of options they can go to. But yeah, no, the rotation was top 5 all last year in ERA and all those numbers. So that's the strength of this team. We feel good about the rotation, if anything.
Also, the Mariners saw them at the the worst time because Berrios probably had his best start. Kikuchi was ridiculous today, and Chris Bassett was
a dog at home.
I mean, you mentioned, Rob, how the Mariners' offense has been pretty painful, and like you said, squeezing the bat tight. That's what Chris Bassett feeds off of. He's like, I'm just gonna screw with you. I'm gonna squat on the mound, and you think I'm gonna get on the mound, then I'm gonna step off the mound with the clock still going, step back on the mound, and then pitch. He's just gonna screw with you constantly, and he throws about 80 pitches. So watching him dice yesterday, it made sense what you're saying about how they're squeezing the bat tight, and yeah, the rotation. We've always been confident in the rotation. It's just the offense is always been in question.
Well, let me tell you, it's amazing how many times things seem to match up where, oh, it's a great time for this pitcher, and oh, the Mariners are coming to town. Somehow the Mariners always seem to stroll into town right at that great time for that pitcher.
I want to end on a final note with you, Rob, I want to end on a positive note for the final question, because obviously we've had a lot of pessimism just amongst the 4 of us already. So let's end on the best note for you and your Mariners fan base. What was the best takeaway for you in this series against the Jays?
The best takeaway for me is when the starting pitching does what it's supposed to do, this team shows it can win. They just have to follow the script that they were built to follow. This team is built to have great starting pitching, to have Munoz come in out of the pen and absolutely blow people away, even if he doesn't always necessarily know where it's going. And they're built to get just enough timely hitting to eke out wins. And that's exactly what happened. They did nothing basically through the first 9 innings of the game. But when they had the little training wheels on and Major League Baseball gave him a runner on second base, they found a way to get him in. And that's how the Mariners have to win, because the offense is not consistent enough to put up a bunch of runs. They're going to have to do it like they did it tonight.
Okay, so you're positive.
I did have one more question for you. I have one more question for you, Rob. And I've always wanted to ask a Mariners fan this. As Blue Jays fans, one series of the year we always circle the Seattle series. We're actually going this year. Me and James are. We're very excited for that. And as we all know, T-Mobile Park, Safeco, whatever it's called, ends up being blue that weekend. And us Jays fans, it's just a celebrity moment in the Jays season every year. I want to ask a Mariners fan, what do you guys think of that? Are you guys you're just numb to it, you don't really care, or are you guys feel a little sour about it?
I'm not mad at Blue Jays fans at all. Good. Go see your team. Some of the tickets in Seattle are cheap. If the Mariners ownership can't put a good enough team on the field to make the people of Seattle want to come out and see it, then the people of Seattle shouldn't give the Mariners ownership their money. Forget that.
Beautiful.
So I'm totally fine with it. Make a better team, then you don't have to worry about other teams' fans invading your stadium.
That's a fair point. That's awesome, Rob. This was a fantastic conversation. Even went a little longer than I think we were all expecting. So it was a pleasure talking to you, man. And I hope that we can do it again when we come to Seattle.
Definitely. Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank
No
you.
problem.
Thank you.
Cheers. All right, boys. That's actually a pretty refreshing look at the Toronto Blue Jays. Clearly, everything we think of the Seattle Mariners, even though they have the playoff win over us, they think the exact same towards us.
It's going to be funny.
I kind of feel like a resonation. Like we're talking about how, he was scared of Vlad. Even me, like you look at Julio's numbers and they're just atrocious all across the board. You're terrified of him when he comes to the plate. So I kind of get that sentiment with him, with Vlad. Yeah, the guys, the pedigree is still there. I get it. I get what he's coming from.
Let's be honest, Rob Cole. Okay, we weren't worried about Julio in this series. It's Cal freaking Raleigh that we're worried about, boys. Like
and he
every
did his job.
time.
Awesome transition.
Oh,
yeah, and he did his job. 2 homers in the series,
obviously. He did, and then also hit the sketch thing as well. And I'm like, yeah, I love that guy. Damn it.
Oh, yeah, we didn't get into that with him, but it's okay. Well, maybe it'll be bulletin board material when we go to Seattle.
Yeah, it'll be
I want to finish things off on recapping the Mariners series with another positive note. Home opener. The Jays were finally home. The vibes were good. The stadium newly renovated. All three of us went into the building this week. You guys on the home opener. I went game 2. What were your vibes there on the home opener, Rob?
I'll be honest, man. You mentioned the good vibes. The vibes are good. They always are. It's opening day, and like obviously, a lot of times in the building, there are the fans who they want to go see the home opener. Let's be honest. There's a lot of casual fans at baseball games, and they don't know about like the intricacies with hitting with runners in scoring position. That IKF was such a big part of the offseason. They go there to have a good time. I respect that, but you did feel, and I want to know if you felt the same way, James. There was some tension in that building. When they introduced the lineups, well, not the lineups, but the team, there didn't seem to appear that same jovial cheer that you would hear other years. And maybe that's because there was no marquee addition this year. So everyone that's been there, there's no extra hype included there. I get that. It felt a little tense there. It felt that the whole crowd was just waiting to get on the team whenever they made a poor play. John Schneider was booed during the introductions. Yeah. Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, who had a terrific game, had a double, hit another RBI hit later in the game, made a nice defensive play. We all know the play that we're talking about, the one where Kevin Kiermaier throws a dart to third. He couldn't get the tag down. I cannot remember who's running for the Mariners. And the fans is just vitriol, like just pure pessimism, just booing, just yelling, saying stuff that you don't really hear at Jays games. I've said many times, I don't think the Jays fan base is necessarily a fickle one. I think that they're generally a more positive fan base relative to teams like the Leafs, for example. I'm sure you would know about that, Pricey. But yeah, I felt as though there was some tension there. It didn't feel as other years. I think that there's some uncomfortable tension between the Jays and their fans, and it's certainly, at least to me, you could see it come out a little bit on opening day. And obviously, booing Schneider when the Barrios thing happened, that just brought back memories of last year. Yeah, it was a little rough. It wasn't all positive vibes. It wasn't all rainbows and sunshine. That's for sure.
No, you mentioned tense, and it felt like that the entire night. I mean, you mentioned how they were booing Schneider when he was getting introduced, and Alek Manoah was introduced. Yeah. And we all understand what he did didn't do last season and hasn't done to this point. Dude was top 5 in Cy Young 2 years ago. And there was a mixture of boos and cheers. And I'm like, wow. And Rob will know the guy I'm talking about here. There was a moment, I don't know if it was the Barrios one or it was something else.
The IKF play. It was the IKF play. That's the one. I remember it.
You know the guy I'm talking about, right?
We didn't get the tag down.
There was a dude who got up and he was furious, yelling at John, all the explicits and all that stuff as well.
Yeah.
And once everyone sat back down and Yimi Garcia comes out.
Oh, right.
Yimi Garcia came out because he was pissed that he pulled him, as a lot of people were. And Yimi Garcia gets the strikeouts. No reaction from the guy. He's wearing Jays gear head to toe, but nothing. And I'm like, you pay $150 to go sit in your seat to cheer against your team in the home opener. Like, it's baffling. So yes, tense was the right word. Everyone's on edge. At least in the home opener. I don't know what it was like on the second day, Cole, but it just seemed that the home opener, just everyone seemed like their butt was clenched, and every small thing that went wrong was like the world was ending.
Very different vibe from the other years. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'll say two things. One, I was obviously a bit distracted from the overall vibe. I was there with 8 other people. So like, and we were in the 500. So like, obviously everybody in the 500s tends to be casual fans outside of myself, who agreed with Rob on the Mariners guy in terms of the owners got to earn the paycheck that I'm willing to spend on tickets. But regardless of the fact, I think that I'll say two things, and I'm just going off of what you guys said. I think it's a little bit of maybe there's a lot of less casual fans than we think that there are. Like, we got to be honest. If it was a stadium full of us, like full of us guys in the Blue Jay Center chat, we kind of would have had the same reactions. Like, obviously, we can understand, we can separate, when to be positive and when boos are worthy. But I think that, from our perspective at least, maybe there's actually a lot more knowledgeable fans on this Jays team right now, and maybe it's because of the continued success the last couple of years, and it's just we've always had millions of people paying attention. So I definitely don't think it's crazy to say that there was pessimism in the building on home opener, and who knows, maybe there was on game 2 as well, but game 2 went pretty seamlessly, so there was definitely no boos from booing actual Jays people, so it's a little bit better. And we won game 1 obviously, so maybe it was better vibes coming into game 2. But I do think that this might be a different year for John Schneider. I will say that, like, that got well documented that nobody was in agreement with that move in the playoffs, and I think that if he was to go out there and make some moves like that this year, he's going to hear it. If not, he might just defaultly hear it, because that Jose Berrios move in game 1, I thought was completely fine. I would have made the exact same move. I didn't think it was early. So I have a feeling that John's going to get it a lot this year, and I hope that he takes that home with him, and he acknowledges that, because we've already heard him without even being at home this year go into a decision-making conversation with the media and already call out like, not us specifically, but us as fans, about moves that he doesn't think we would like. Like, he already is acknowledging that, and he hadn't even been home yet at that point. So I think that this is going to be a different year for John Schneider, but that actually leads me perfectly to my next thing, and I do want to give him his props. 13 games into the season, I actually think he's done a very good job from a pitching staff. Like, I think that outside of our gripe with, how many starts Davis Schneider should have got, which, if we really break it down, probably was like 2 less than what he actually deserved. Yeah, like, I think he's actually been pretty fucking good, if we're being honest.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm going to go against you guys on the whole Berrios thing.
Oh, okay.
The reason why is we heard after the Bassett outing, the bullpen ain't rested. The bullpen is basically broken, and we need Bassett, the oldest guy in the starting rotation, to throw 115 pitches to get us through. Where Berrios, in a 5-0 game, throwing 14 less pitches with 2 out in the inning, couldn't finish it. That's a fair debate. Today, we had to see Tim Meza go out there in extras. I'm sorry. And I understand you're down 1-0. I understand the situation. But if your bullpen is as thin as we all kind of see it is, other than Yimi Garcia and maybe Chad Green, who do you honestly trust? Nobody. So you're going to need your starters to go deep. And Kikuchi is at 89 pitches today, 89 through 6. And they chose to go to Pearson. Look, it looked great. Pearson was good. Yimi Garcia, boy, I think we're talking about that in a second. I'm not going to touch on that yet. Holy crap. But then you had to see Meza in extras.
Yeah.
You didn't have a choice.
You
give Kikuchi the extra inning and see what happens. Because he was dicing 9 Ks, tied his Blue Jays high for the 3 year, 2 and a bit he's been here. Yeah. So I understand, in a real world with a healthy Romano, a healthy Swanson, and a fully loaded bullpen, sure, taking him out in the 6th is fine. Taking Berrios in that situation is fine. But in this situation, the way this bullpen looks, you need to stretch those guys. And they can do it. They've shown you. So that's what pissed me off. And then seeing Bassett go 150 the next night baffled me. It just baffled me.
Rob?
So, two things. One, you're talking about the Barrios decision, right? The full Barrios with 2 outs in the seventh inning. That's the one you're referring to.
It's all of them, honestly, because
It's
it all
I think
kind of ties together.
Yeah,
really.
that's what I was gonna say. It sounds like James
Okay.
was fine with that decision in a vacuum, but then game 2 happened.
Yeah,
And then game 3 happened.
When I saw 101 Bassett leaving after 6, I'm like, okay, his night's done. Nope, they really tried to push him.
Yeah.
So
it's
that's what
been
got me.
inconsistent.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, right. But if Jose Barrios stays in, it's to finish that inning, and that's it. Then Yimi Garcia would have came into the 8th anyway. So Yimi Garcia and Chad Green were going to pitch that game regardless of what Jose Barrios got pulled. You know what I mean? So it's not that you had to burn an extra guy. And I'd also argue that the bullpen is thin. You're right, but I think it's more of a story of you need to score more than 1 run in 9 innings.
No, I'm not against
Yeah.
that for sure. They
Again,
100% needed to.
both
100%.
things can be true.
I'm not talking about the offense at all. I agree. 1 run ain't gonna win you a damn ball game. There's no doubt. But it's just the fact that you know that you only have literally 2. Look what John Schneider said after the game today about Mesa.
Yeah.
His stuff ain't good right now.
Yeah.
And you had to throw him in the extra innings because you didn't have anybody else.
Right.
Yeah.
So, what I was also going to say too, like even if you pulled Kikuchi at 89, that's one where you could have said, okay, start him in the 7th, and then it was the bottom of the order. So let's see how it goes. My counter to that is you have your contingency plan is a guy who you don't trust. It's Nate Pearson. Nate Pearson comes into that inning. If it goes awry, he's a guy who you don't trust with anyone on base. You don't trust him coming into a clean inning with nobody on base.
Right. And
you know what I mean?
Top of the order because that would mean the inning went awry.
So exactly.
Yeah.
So the reason why I didn't have a problem with it is because you already kind of pushed Kikuchi. You already started him against the lineup third time through, which is you seldomly ever do with him. Even last year when he was rolling, you never did that with him. So to me, I thought pushing him through 6 was already. I know the pitch count was good, but if you saw near the end of that game, he struck out. Who was the last guy? I can't remember the last Mariner batter that he struck out. But prior to that strikeout, they were putting some contact on him. He hadn't recorded a strikeout in like multiple innings. There were some hard hit balls, nothing major, but a couple balls that got up there on the radar gun. So it was obvious that he was kind of leaking a little bit of oil, even though it was still, the rig wasn't sinking or anything. But I thought he was proactive. I thought he took him out at the right time. We disagree. That's fine.
Yeah.
But I feel like I do understand your linear thinking. When you have a very limited pen like they had today, missing 3 legitimate leverage guys, maybe you start him in the 7th. I get that. I get it.
What I was gonna say, and we can all agree on this, is you're dealt a shitty hand. Like no matter what, when you're dealing with your number 1 and 2 options out of on injury,
3 because Chad Green wasn't available today.
Yeah, we're 3.
Yeah,
we're gonna have conversations like this. So, and that's why I cut John some slack in this situation. But it's funny also that he fully admitted that Tim Mesa's stuff wasn't good. So that means he does have it in him to admit when things
he's got eyes, right?
going good. That means it also means he has eyes to acknowledge when things aren't going well. So maybe he should do that a little bit more often. But we can move on to the biggest note of today's game, at least, was Yimi Garcia. Outside of the offense, we also agree on that. But Yimi Garcia, when this guy, we had it on the podcast last episode, when this guy is on, he's, in my opinion, one of the best 1B options in the league. Like, it's unbelievable what he brings. Throwing 99 today.
He had 100, touched 100 one time.
Oh my God.
Hardest pitch of his career. 99.8.
That's nuts.
Yep.
Yeah.
I just thought, honestly, it wasn't even just the velocity, too. It was the pitch sequencing and the location of all of his pitches. Like, boys, he was spreading that thing around. And I think, was it the Mitch Garver AB? Where he paints a 2-seamer on the outer corner. And I'm like, that's just nasty. And then he's like, all right, I just painted 97 in the corner. Was it Garver, Rob?
I believe it was Garver, yes.
Yeah. And then he's like, okay, I just gave you that 2-seam heat. Here's a slider on the down and away corner as close to the corner as you can get. And I'm like, what are you supposed to do with that? And then he paints 99. And I'm like, oh my God.
Every single slider looked like it finished just below the zone. Like, below the zone. Like, swinging you out of your shoes. Like Rob said in the chat, those guys didn't stand a chance. There was nobody that was going to touch a ball that inning with the way Jimmy was pitching. But
I just had like ridiculous confidence in those 2 innings, and the push him through was massive. Like we mentioned, like the bullpen being down. Like how big was he to go to give you 2 innings? I know the first one was short, and that's what allowed him to go in the second. But and this was, don't forget, this wasn't the bottom of the order. This was top shop and then middle of the order, each inning respectively, and they just looked so overmatched. Like this lineup it looked like they had no shot against Yimi Garcia, who the velo's good, the stuff is awesome, and I couldn't have said it better myself, James. Before we move on, though, I do want to touch on, because I don't want it to go unnoticed.
Okay.
We talked about Yusei Kikuchi in the terms of whether he should have stayed in or not. I want to tip my cap. Yusei Kikuchi was fantastic today. He was phenomenal today. Just even in the first inning, he struck out Julio and he struck out who's hitting third? Ty France. Both of them on nasty sliders, low and away, bottom of the zone. They were just filthy pitches. He tied them both up. Just awesome stuff by Yusei Kikuchi. The only run he gave up was a shallow floater by J.P. Crawford, which the runner stole second, Dylan Moore, after you walked him. But his stuff looked electric as it's always looked. Yusei Kikuchi now, 2 really good starts back to back. And every start he's had so far, it's gotten progressively better, which is super encouraging. I guess many people came into the season pegging him as the obvious candidate for regression on the pitching staff. And I get that. You look at all the career norms. He was the one who last year deviated the most from his regular. I disagree that perhaps maybe this is just the guy who the pitch clock really helped him. He kind of got out of his head. The stuff was always there with Yusei Kikuchi. He wasn't a below average pitcher before last year because he didn't belong there. Like, the stuff was always there. He didn't put it all together. And last year he did. To me, I don't look at last year as a fluke, to be honest with you. I feel confident when he goes on the mound.
That's the thing within 2022. Like, you saw the stuff. It was always there. The fastball velo from the left side, the crazy movement on his off speed. Dude, he just can never locate, right? And where have we seen that before? Kind of like a guy like Robbie Ray, right? Fantastic stuff, couldn't locate. And then he figures it out, throws strikes, and just everything comes together for him. And boy, he's been good, fellas.
Yeah.
I mean,
awesome.
At Yankee Stadium and then just dominating his former team today. Come on.
Yeah. No, you can't ask for anything more out of Yusei Kikuchi at this current moment. And we can't ask anything more from our fans. It's the banner bag section. We only have one question today because we have a packed show, but we do have to talk about it. We re-signed Kevin Kiermaier for a reason, because he had one of his best years of his career with us, or at least a resurgence year last year. And so far, he has been ugly offensively, a 0 WAR on the season. So thank God for that defense, because if it wasn't for that, then I think we'd be having a significantly different conversation right now. Where do we sit on the whole Kevin Kiermaier situation? I know we've already discussed the fact that it never should have been signed in the first place, because we could have moved the best defensive outfielder in baseball to center field. We acknowledge that, but where do we sit now? Like, now that we have to deal with that reality, Rob?
Yeah, I was actually just going to go there before you mentioned it. The signing was always questionable from the moment it was signed. I said that if you can get a 4-win player on a 1-year, $10 million deal in a vacuum, it's great. Like, don't get me wrong, the value is absolutely there. And I still think Kevin Kiermaier can provide good value for that contract. It's more of a roster construction issue because, as you mentioned, you paid a premium to get Dalton Varsho, and now you're sticking him in a corner outfield position, a non-premium position. You're no longer utilizing a guy who you pay top dollar to get. And I think that's what's detracted from his value. We don't have to even talk about Dalton Varsho, but Kevin Kiermaier, at this moment, if Dalton Varsho is going to keep producing what he's been producing, and Kevin Kiermaier, you can't have both of them in the lineup.
You can't.
It's really that simple. You just can't afford to have both of them in your everyday lineup. Both of them are good defenders, but sticking either of them, which obviously would be Varsho because Kevin Kiermaier is a better center fielder, it just really hampers your lineup. It just really hampers your lineup, and the defense is just not worth it. It's not worth sticking one of these guys in the corner outfield. To me, I think you have to organize a lineup in such a way that you just keep both of them out of the lineup. You either have Kevin Kiermaier start in center field, you start Davis Schneider in left, or start Dalton Varsho in center, start Davis Schneider in left. You got to find a way, because with both of them in this lineup and both of them struggling the way they have, to me, it's just unplayable. They're just unplayable together.
Yeah, and as great as the defense,
I don't think there's a solution. I just think it's just that simple. You can't have both of them going forward.
And as great as his defense is, watching him hit under 100 with an OPS of under 300.
Yeah, OPS starts with a 2.
Yeah.
His OPS plus is a negative.
And we're
OPS plus is -6.
And we are 11 games. Like, that's 11 games worth. It's not a big sample, obviously, but 11 games of negative OPS plus, it is bad. It's bad. And obviously today was awful. I mean, got pinch ran for IKF, which what? Wait, no, that's not right.
No.
So he pinch hit for Vogelbach.
Oh, yeah.
For IKF
right.
Vogelbach got
just kind of weird. Yeah,
I was going to say that wouldn't have happened.
No. Yeah, that's why I had to think about that. But he went 0 for 3 with 3 punch-outs today, and he just got overmatched by Gilbert Slider.
Not one competitive at bat. Didn't have a shot in any at bat.
Didn't have a
Didn't have a shot in any at bat.
No.
Yeah. So that's our thoughts on Kevin Kiermaier. We're going to move on to our Stat Genius section, which also features a guy that's having some trouble at the plate. Rob, lead the way.
All right, guys. So time for the Stat Genius segment of the game. Of the week or the pod. Because we do 2 a week. Anyways, Stat Genius section. Coming into the season, what was the major proponent to be optimistic about this offense? The positive regression. There's no way these guys can be as bad as they used to be last season. They look at their career norms. They're going to be better. Trust me, they're going to be better. Who do we talk about? Obviously Vlad. Obviously Dalton Varsho. One of the guys, though, that was also lumped in with those guys, Alejandro Kirk, who we all know was a Silver Slugger at catcher, was an All-Star at catcher in 2022, represented the Blue Jays. He was starting for the American League at Dodger Stadium for that All-Star game. I already kind of revealed it in the chat, so unfortunately I won't get the surprised looks that maybe you would have gotten after reading it, but since the 2022 All-Star game, Alejandro Kirk has 11 home runs. Isaiah Kiner-Falefa has 10. Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, who we came into the season and we said, this guy's going to be the black hole of the lineup. He's going to be an awful big league hitter. He's just, the signing made no sense. You needed offense. Why did you sign IKF? He provides no offense.
Right.
OPS-wise, Alejandro Kirk and IKF, since that moment, which is this is not like a small sample, guys. This is like well over 600 plate appearances, spanning across multiple seasons. Their OPSs are like right around the same area, right around the 660 mark. So my question, like not even a question, but what I'm pointing out is that we maybe underestimated Alejandro Kirk or overestimated Alejandro Kirk.
Definitely
Overestimated, how what he can do. Maybe just the reality, Alejandro Kirk's just not that great of a hitter. He just had a really good 3-month stretch at the beginning of 2022, and it's hard to reconcile because coming up, he was a bad first catcher. That was his value. This guy can hit.
Yeah.
He's got some trouble behind the plate, but he's hit everywhere in the minor leagues. He got off. He had a good start. His first 2 seasons, he was an above league average hitter. Granted, there were abbreviated seasons. One was 9 games in that COVID 2020 season. But we've gotten to an extended sample now of Alejandro Kirk just not being a good big league hitter at all. And for the positive regression guys, which we were all hoping for, yeah, perhaps we may have missed the mark a bit on that one.
Right.
This still doesn't have an extra base hit this season, which is it feels impossible. Feels impossible how we're serious this season. He doesn't have one. Doesn't have one extra base hit, hitting in the middle of the order just about every game too. It's really rough to watch.
And they chose him over Gabby. Oh boy.
Yeah, so okay, that's what I was just gonna say. Like, unfortunately, that if we're gonna actually have this conversation, it's got to be saved for another day because I was actually one of the people that wasn't high on Alejandro Kirk, and I thought that if there was any pathway to him being included in that trade for Dalton Varsho, then it should have been done. But that we just do not have time to get into today. So that is the Stat Genius section. We move on to the fun section on the farm, going to Buffalo.
So last week we had a bunch of it was great things and then some flat out miserable crap.
Right.
However, there's some positive news now. And a lot of it is in AAA Buffalo. So let's start with the biggest positive for Blue Jay fans. Danny Jansen got into game action today for the Bisons. He was DHing today, so he'll probably be catching in the next couple of days. So it's a great sign. And by the way, he hit a slam in Buffalo
in his
today.
first at bat.
Yeah, I think second at bat. First time was a bloop single over first base.
Gotcha.
But then I think second AB,
so
absolute slam. So great to see Jano. I think Jays fans are all like, yeah, can you please hurry up? Because Kirk's bat stinks. And just
my last segment,
yeah, exactly. Just fantastic. Anyways, what else we got? We got Swanson and Romano updates. And both guys are planning to pitch tomorrow for the Buffalo Bisons. Now, they only got into 1 or 2 spring training games. So I don't know how, again, being relievers, only needing 1 inning to work, I don't know how much they need to be stretched out, but it's a great sign. They're going to be back in game action tomorrow for the Bisons. So that's really good news there. And depending on how you feel about it, Alek Manoah starts on Saturday for the Bisons. With Bowden Francis, his start looming against the Rockies on Saturday. Actually, they're the same day.
Yep.
It could say a little something because we talked, I think, last week about them wanting to keep Yariel Rodriguez and let him just kind of, I guess, simmer? No, what would be? I don't know what the right word would use there, but either way, they want him to stay down there as long as possible.
Yeah,
to really sniff him out a little bit. Yeah, and with Alec Manoah, he went from a absolute piss poor start in Dunedin, and now he's a Buffalo.
Yeah,
so take that for what it is. But he'll be starting on Saturday.
But Bowden and Alec are basically starting against the same level of opponent too. Bowden gets to start against Colorado, and he gets to start against some AAA team.
Oh yeah, so that's wild. Now, Rob, you got something to say?
I was gonna say, I think that's pretty significant that they're starting on the same day. Like that would mean that their rotation slot would match up. So hypothetically speaking, well, first of all, let me just say, if Bowden Francis if this start doesn't go well, this is his last start. That's it.
Hopefully.
Like we can't. Yeah, no, it has to be because even if Manoah's not ready, even if Manoah doesn't do well, even if you want to keep Yariel, you have to at least do the Trevor Richards opener / Paolo Espino, Mitch White bulk guy game. Like to me, you can't afford to throw away another game. If Bowden Francis 3 straight starts, one against a feeble Rockies team doesn't go well. No, to me, that's it. Like to me, this is the end. This is the end of the Bowden Francis experience if it doesn't go well.
Yeah, we'll see, fellas. Do you think they did that on purpose? Line them up for the same day? Just in case.
It would seem logical, right? It would seem logical that the rotation days would match up. Because the last thing you want to do is have Manoah go Thursday, and all of a sudden Bowden Francis has a bad start. Now all of a sudden they're no longer matched up. Like it's just it would feel logical. It would feel logical that they did.
So we're all pessimistic about the offense at the big league level, at least. The AAA boys are mashing. We're not just talking about Jano right now. But I wrote down some notes, and the Bison's game was going as I was writing them down. And somehow Spencer Horwitz upped his numbers from a 406 average and an almost 1,100 OPS. He'd upped that since I looked. Listen to this. He's hitting 424 with an 1,144 OPS. He went 3 for 4 with 3 RBIs, walked once, and scored a run today. He shouldn't be there, boys. Yeah. He shouldn't be there. What else we got down here? This is all in Buffalo, by the way. Addison Barger hitting 316 with a 948 OPS. And Will Robertson, keep an eye, fellas. This guy's an outfielder. He's finally growing through the system. He's played 6 games with the Bisons. He's hitting 500. His 4 bombs, including today, is an 1,800 OPS. It's 6 games, but holy crap, he is going bananas.
A name that Jays fans haven't really heard, I would assume, up to this point. So, and a name that probably sees action faster than an Addison Barger or faster than a Spencer Horwitz, just simply based off of this roster construction.
Oh, absolutely. Here's what I will say, though. The roster construction kind of prevents these guys a bit. It blocks these guys in. There's only one position player. Only one position player that has options, other than Brian Servant, of course, which we all know he's a catcher. Once Danny Jansen comes back, he's going down. Davis Schneider is the only guy that you can option. That has to go through that wouldn't have to go through waivers. So obviously we all recognize Davis Schneider should be playing every day, nevertheless be on a big league roster. So to me, it's like all these guys it's great they're performing at the AAA level, but if you're gonna call them up, you have to make a tough decision. And to me, like it's not as easy. It's not as easy as just cut Daniel Vogelbach, because what are you gonna do? You're gonna have these guys come up and sit on the bench. Like you need to, if you're calling them up, they got to be playing at least regularly.
Vogelbach definitely is the current option. Like he's the guy that gets cut.
Well, I get that, but to me, it's like that doesn't free up playing time. Cutting Daniel Vogelbach, he already wasn't playing.
I know, but it gives you the opportunity to not start Kevin Kiermaier and Dalton Varsho on the same day every day.
Yeah, either way, I think that the roster is tight. It's just
it's tight.
To me, it would have to be an injury almost. To me, all these guys performing well, it'd have to be an injury for them to.
I will agree with you that past Daniel Vogelbach, that's where you have to have a serious conversation. It's like, because what are you going to do with IKF? What are you going to do with Kevin Kiermaier? Because that's it. That's kind of where the list starts and stops.
So the last part,
not a lot of flexibility
down in Double A, because they finally got their season going. 2 of the Jays' top, I'll say 11 prospects, because BJC legend Josh Kasevich is 11th, and number 7 Alan Roden. They're hitting 1-2 in New Hampshire, and Alan Roden hitting 333 with an OPS of 789. We obviously know he doesn't have massive power. What else is new with this org? But that's the case there. And Josh Kasevich, again, not much there, but he's hitting 389 with an 865 OPS to start the season. So both look offensively down in the minors, looking good, fellas, at least to start the season. It's just not with the big club.
Okay. Thank you, James. That's the update from Buffalo, and a pretty good one on this episode. So we're recording on April 10th. So that as of right now, we're looking pretty good. 3 weeks into the season. I want to quickly just mention the AL East. This is some out of town talk that we'll get into every once in a while in these podcasts. The AL East is, as usual, dominating. Coming into today, every team in the AL East had a 500 record or above that, and only 2 teams in the majors have 10 wins. One of those is the New York Yankees. So the Jays obviously just fell to below 500, so now that stat doesn't exist anymore. But everybody has 6 wins plus. So the AL East is off to a dominating start, and including in that conversation, number 1 prospect in baseball made his debut today, Jackson Holliday for the Baltimore Orioles.
Over 4.
And
Sorry.
a horrific defensive play. By the way, fellas, I had to drop this in there because I just had to look. You mentioned the 10-win Yankees, and I have to. They lost 5-2 to the Marlins tonight. But they didn't just lose 5-2 to the Marlins.
Oh.
In the bottom of the 9th inning, they had the bases loaded with Aaron Judge up, and he got out.
Ooh.
So there's a little
shame.
tidbit there.
What a shame.
Yeah, but we got more important things to worry about, and that's the Colorado Rockies. Let's get into the preview quickly to finish off today's show. So, coming into the year, they have a top 15 offense according to raw numbers. Obviously, we know the Colorado Rockies play in the most hitter-friendly ballpark in baseball, so that's a bit skewed. But their pitching is not skewed at all. Bottom 5, across the board. They suck. They're just horrible. This is one of those conversations, or one of those series where I brought up the conversation earlier in the previous pod of maybe it's one of those where you can, you should be looking for a sweep. At minimum, you need to win this series. We got Gausman, Bowden, and Barrios going up against them. This offense at home against that team and that pitching staff, there is no reason why we can't go home 2-3. 2 out of 3.
Oh, if you
100%.
anything less than 2 out of 3 is an abject failure. And
Yeah.
if you lose 2 out of 3, there's going to be talks within the media, there'll be talks in the fan base about John Schneider actually
Talks on the
getting
Blue Jay
canned.
Center podcast
Oh,
presented
it'll be
by
all
the
over
Sick
the
Podcast
place.
Network. Yeah.
It'll be all over the place, boys. That team is atrocious. All right. You have 2 of your 3 best pitchers going on the mound. Sprinkled in some Bowden Francis in there as well. But, your offense, I think that's where we got to look, fellas. That offense has to mash. The Rockies always have one of the worst pitching staffs in baseball. Now, again, like you mentioned, Cole, one of the most hitter-friendly ballparks. But that doesn't mean squat. It means no pitchers want to go there, which means all the crappy ones do. So,
With them, yeah.
fellas, they need to get 2 of 3. And let's be honest, they kind of should take 3. It's difficult to do in baseball. It's difficult to do in baseball to sweep any series. But if you're going to be a team that's fighting for a wild card spot, as we were talking to Rob earlier about the Jays and Rockies, Mariners battling it out the rest of the way,
right.
And they're probably going to be a nail biter at the end.
Yep.
These are the series you have to capitalize
exactly.
on.
And the division, simply it comes down to that. It came down to it last year. You cannot rely on getting wins in the AL East. You cannot. So you better beat the heck out of the teams that exist like the Colorado Rockies.
Yeah, absolutely.
I will say too, we came into this season, we all cited the start was very difficult. The schedule was very difficult right out of the gate. You have that 10-game road trip, and then Seattle coming in. That was a difficult series too, because Seattle, they're off to a bad start. Last year they were the 88-win team. They were a playoff team the year before. There was a tough team to play. We cited that 7-6 was the goal through 13. You're 6-7, so not quite there, but it's fine. It's an acceptable. Yeah. It's not a disaster. Far from a disaster. We'll take it. Now the kitty gloves are off. Now you actually have to go out there and you do some damage against the Rockies, like you guys mentioned. So series win is the bare minimum. The bare minimum. There's no, you can't anything less than 2 out of 3 abject failure. And like I said, like you guys said, sweep. That should be on the table. It's if they don't sweep, it's not the end of the world, but it should be on the table. That should be a realistic scenario.
Yeah, and the only reason why it isn't is because of Bowden Francis. And that's no offense to Bowden Francis, but that's the only reason why this is not us coming in here going, no, we need to sweep these guys. Because if Bowden, by all means, with the bullpen problems that we're having right now, with the bottom of the order that exists on this team right now, and Bowden Francis, even if he has a better start than he's had so far, he could still, give up 3, and then the Jays, when they're down by 3, it's curtains. So, by all means...
Hey, look, Bowden. Look, man. You can use there's a lot of pressure in the start. We all acknowledge it. This could very well be your last look as a big league starting pitcher, at least for this team. Use that as motivation. You go out there and have a great start against the Rockies team. All of a sudden, you've just built so much more equity. You have a start to build off of. you have a chance here, man. You have a chance here to go out there and dominate against a bad team. So take advantage of it. Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's see it.
Let's be honest, fellas.
At home.
He dominates or even is 6 innings, a 2-run ball. He'll get another start.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
That's just kind of where it is, right?
Yeah. I don't think it's
for
set
sure.
in stone.
I think this club would love to give Manoah a little bit more time. Would love to give
Sure.
Yariel more time. Love to give Tiedemann, which by the way, like with Tiedemann, like if you listen to our guy Bunkus' pod, from his sources, it's multiple months. He's not coming here for another couple months.
No.
Tiedemann's coming up, so that's not really a realistic situation. But yeah, no, this front office would love to ride the Broughton Francis wave as much as possible. The only issue is that if there's another bad one, I'm not sure how much more you can realistically ride. But yeah, huge start for him. A great opportunity to have his first big league quality start.
Another opportunity for the Jays to continue their momentum and build off of this Mariners series that did show a lot of promise on both sides of the ball. That's it from us today. James Price, Rob Pentalaman, Cole Whiston, here with the Blue Jays Center podcast presented by the Sick Podcast Network. See you on Sunday.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Blue Jays Center on YouTube, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.